Plato said the soul remembers. Before birth, it saw the forms, the pure realities beyond matter, beauty untainted by fashion, justice untouched by power, truth unbent by convenience. Then it descended into flesh and forgot, almost forgot. That faint unease you've carried your whole life, the feeling that something is missing even when everything looks okay. It is memory. You sense it when you watch people argue over details while ignoring essence, when love feels shallow, when achievement feels empty, when beauty feels distorted. The modern world calls it dissatisfaction. Plato called it recollection. You feel there's something higher because there is. Plato's world was full of clever men who mistook limitation for truth. They built statues of gods, wrote laws about justice, sang of beauty, but none of it satisfied him. He saw that everything in the material world is a shadow, an echo of a higher pattern. Every beautiful thing is a reflection of beauty itself. Every act of fairness hints at justice itself. We live surrounded by copies, and we mistake them for originals. That's why pleasure fades. That's why success never ends longing. You're not broken for wanting more, you're simply remembering the source. Ambition is often disguised metaphysics. You chase power, recognition, progress, not because you need more things, but because you are trying to touch perfection through them. The cave shows it. Prisoners stare at shadows, thinking that if they can name them, own them, they'll find meaning. But they never will. The freed one turns from imitation toward origin. He seeks not better shadows, but the fire that makes them visible. You felt that instinct when nothing external could satisfy you, when even victory felt hollow. That's your soul saying, "This is not it." Ordinary life always feels too small to the awakened because it is. Everything in it decays, contradicts itself, changes shape. But you carry an instinct for permanence. That's why impermanence hurts you more than it should. You mourn beauty not only because it fades, but because you know beauty shouldn't fade. You crave justice because you've glimpsed what justice could be. You can't settle for lies because truth, once remembered, won't let you. That disconnect is sacred. It's the compass of the freed. Society teaches you to solve this hunger with consumption buy, climb, destruct, repeat. But that only deepens the urge because the soul is asking for purity while the world offers copies. Plato warned of this confusion. When the freed one sees the fire, he may think it's the source, but even that fire is imitation. The true source lies beyond, in sunlight, the realm of forms. The spiritual equivalent of that mistake is worshipping symbols, careers, ideologies, idols, movements, beliefs. They shimmer like truth but collapse under touch. Every time one disappointed you, you got closer to remembering. Once in a while, the veil lifts, a sunrise freezes time, a sentence pierces you like lightning. You look at someone and see eternity behind their eyes. For a moment, you remember the form, that clarity, worldless, luminous, unbearable. Then it fades, and you chase it again. Don't chase the feeling, though. Chase the state of being that allows it. That is real philosophy. That's Catharsian. After glimpsing what's higher, the lower becomes unbearable. The freed prisoner who has seen the sun can no longer worship shadows. The beauty of forms makes imitation painful. This is the origin of your disillusionment. You didn't lose faith, you outgrew imitation. You're not cynical, you're accurate. Cynicism is the disappointment of those who wanted meaning to be easy. Philosophy is the discipline of those who accept the meaning is costly. If you've ever felt that every joy fades too fast, if you've ever sensed that truth must exist beyond opinion, if you've ever known beauty that no language can explain, you are remembering. You're Plato's freed prisoner. You're a Catharsian. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon for those who remember that they can't describe. The Pythagorean path train perception to recognize forms behind appearances. Diogenes' barrel, stripe away illusions, the false to reach essence. The Aurelius Council, a gathering for those building structure in light, not shadow. The world is imitation, and your memory. Stop trying to belong with shadows. You don't belong there. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon and reclaim your suppressed power. You wake up one morning and realize you can no longer live on surfaces. Every conversation that circles appearances feels thin. Every ambition that promises fulfillment feels staged. You move through life as if through smoke. This isn't depression, it's recognition. The world of appearances has lost its spell because you've seen the structure beneath it. Plato said most people never leave the cave because the shadows entertain them. You have, and nothing here dazzles you anymore. The music still plays, but you hear the echo of silence behind it. After remembering the higher, you start living with two sets of eyes. One sees what everyone else sees, the politics, the dramas, the currencies. The other sees patterns, repetition, imitation, endless copies of what once was true. It's disorienting. You can't unsee the gap between simple and essence. A gesture that seems kind hides vanity. A victory feels empty because you sense the form it imitates honor, justice, love absent from its execution. The double vision can drive people mad, but for the disciplined mind, it becomes power. When you see through illusions, you stop serving them, you become a Catharsian. The world trains you to measure life by quantity followers, money, applause. But quantity is shadow logic, multiplication of the same emptiness. You've begun to crave quality instead, the density of truth in a moment, the precision of words, the purity of intention. That's the first visible change in the soul that remembers. You start choosing less that is true over more that is hollow. The cave calls that failure. Philosophy calls it calibration. It calls it freedom. When you live among imitations, even love feels counterfeit. People say the right things, but the energy behind them is borrowed. They offer presence, but not being. You stop mistaking attention for affection. You stop believing intensity equals depth. You crave the rare alignment where two souls remember the same higher pattern, where conversation feels like climbing. This is why solitude stops frightening you. The absence of noise becomes the space where recognition can finally happen. In his symposium, Plato wrote that the soul begins by loving beautiful bodies, then realizes beauty isn't in the body, but in propulsion. From propulsion, it rises to beautiful minds, then to beautiful laws, and finally to beauty itself. That ladder explains why you've always loved differently, why you lose interest when others settle. You're not chasing novelty, you're ascending through reflections toward souls. Ordinary love stops at flesh. The philosopher's love keeps climbing until it touches the eternal. The more you see the forms, the more idols collapse. You stop idolizing people, ideologies, nations, brands. Everything materialized from the same principle imitation of what once was pure. This doesn't make you cynical, it makes you selective. You start treating everything as simple and searching for the original behind it. You see through culture and find consciousness. Living with awareness of the higher requires discipline. The world will tempt you to forget. You'll be told to be practical, to stop overthinking, to accept reality. But reality, as the crowd defines it, is merely agreement about illusions. You'll need a practice that keeps memory alive, reading that reminds you, silence that startles you, work that serves clarity instead of ego. That's why the ancient schools existed, not as escapes, but as maintenance for sight. Without practice, vision decays back into opinion. To the Catharsian, truth is muscle. Every day you train perception like a soldier polishes his blade. You study patterns instead of news, principles instead of personalities. When people gossip, you listen for archetypes, repetition of fear, pride, desire. When events unfold, you see geometry, how greed bends lines, how virtue straightens them. You don't react, you recognize. This recognition turns pain into knowledge and chaos into design. That's why living among imitations means walking through shadows with eyes open, with eyes that measure light. This is catharsis. You stop needing to explain yourself. The more you live by higher forms, the less you argue with those still trapped in reflection. When they chase pleasure, you just watch. When they suffer from their own illusions, you understand. Compassion replaces judgment, not because you approve, but because you remember how dark the cave was before your eyes adjusted. You start radiating steadiness that others can't name but feel. They say you're different. They're right, you are. You're oriented upward while the rest spin in circles. If you've grown tired of substitutes, if you sense the original behind every imitation, if solitude feels cleaner than false belonging, you are not detached. You are remembering. You are Plato's freed prisoner. You're a Catharsian. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon because you're walking between the copy and the source, guided by the hunger for what never decays. For those navigating the world of copies, the Pythagorean path, daily exercises in discernment, train to distinguish essence from appearance. Diogenes' barrel, radical simplicity, destroy idols before they claim you. The Aurelius Council, builders who serve the form, not idols, become a Catharsian leader. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon and become the leader you were always meant to be. The final step in Plato's ascent is paradoxical. After the soul remembers, after it learns to recognize patterns behind matter, it discovers there's no separate there. The higher is not a place you reach, it's a state you become. You stop gazing upward and start radiating outward. You realize that to honor the forms, you must incarnate them. Beauty isn't something you admire, it's precision in how you move. Justice isn't just an idea, it's consistency in how you treat the powerless. Truth isn't abstraction, it's the refusal to distort what you know. When the freed prisoner looks back toward the cave now, the shadows no longer insult him, they remind him of his responsibility to let the sunlight he carries fall on them. Plato hinted that the philosopher must return to the city. The world of forms is contemplation, the world of man is proof. The Catharsian does the same. The moment thought and deed align, the invisible becomes visible. The world sees shape where before there was theory. That is the mission of one who remembers the higher, not worship, but translation. That's catharsis. Once you start living as form, you spend energy differently. Every gesture costs, every word carries weight. You no longer scatter yourself across impressions. You conserve clarity the way ascetics conserve food. Each interaction must point upward, otherwise, it dissolves you. The economy gives rise to a strange calm. You stop chasing intensity, you choose proportion. The mathematical pace of harmony Plato loved. The crowd mistakes this stillness for detachment. It's geometry made human, it's catharsis. The highest beauty, Plato said, is self similar, unchanging, symmetrical, complete. When you start acting from that level, beauty returns, not as decoration, but as order. Rooms you inhabit become quieter, work you produce feels deliberate, even your silence acquires contour. The freed one ceases to appreciate beauty, they generate it. Each disciplined thought, each precise word, each honest gesture becomes an echo of the perfect pattern. That's why real authority feels aesthetic. Integrity is elegance in moral form. Clarity isolates, but it also commands. People start deferring to you in ways they can't explain. They sense alignment, even if they can't name it. You speak rarely, but when you do, noise collapses around the sentence. That's not just charisma, it's coherence. Truth vibrates at a steady frequency, and every unstable thing adjusts to it or it breaks. The freed one doesn't dominate, they stabilize. The higher always orders the lower. At the summit waits one last shadow, the belief that you own the light. The philosopher who begins to think of themselves as pure becomes the most dangerous captive of all, imprisoned not by ignorance but by pride. Plato warned that even contemplation of the good can blind if the gaze is arrogant. That's why the wise return to humility daily. Diogenes in rags, Epictetus calling himself servant of reason, Marcus Aurelius reminding himself he will die. Perfection can only live through imperfection. The form needs matter to express itself. The freed prisoner stays human to keep truth alive. Once you embody the higher, teaching happens by proximity, not persuasion. A single act of precision inspires more than 1,000 speeches. A calm presence inside chaos becomes instruction without words. That's the essence of the Catharsian lineage, the transmission of form through behavior. The world changes not when many believe, but when a few become. You teach by existing correctly. Eventually, the age for something higher dissolves because you realize you are already inside what you sought. The forms were never elsewhere, they were the blueprint of your own becoming. Now, every ordinary thing reveals symmetry again, light on a table, laughter of strangers, the pulse of your breath. The eternal hides in simplicity, the climb ends in arrival at the beginning, seeing the cave as part of the design. That serenity is the philosopher's reward, not escape, but comprehension. If you've ever reached the point where searching turned into knowing, you are Plato's freed prisoner, you're a Catharsian. You're no longer climbing toward perfection, you are reflecting it. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon for those ready to live as the reflection of what they once sought. The Pythagorean path, daily refinement of proportion, align the inner with the eternal. Diogenes' barrel, humility practice, remain human while holding light. The Aurelius Council, fellowship of those who act as living forms, steady, clear, and incorruptible, Catharsian leaders. You have remembered, you have seen, now it's time to be. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon and become the leader you were always meant to be.